But in interest of keeping on time for a packed 2-day agenda, I first of all just want to welcome everybody to this third annual meeting of the Wetlands as Natural Climate Solutions Network. Welcome, David. I got my eye on you. You're now here. We can officially start. Um, I just want to, on behalf of Pascal and myself and Diego, our incredible project manager who works tirelessly behind the scenes, I just want to acknowledge everybody for the hard work that they're doing as part of the network, and we're really excited to be able to share some of the outcomes of your efforts today. As we start, I want to start with a land acknowledgement. I want to take a moment to recognize and honor the Indigenous peoples across what is now called Canada. From coast to coast to coast, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples have cared for the lands, waters, and skies since time immemorial. As someone who is part of a national research network, I feel deep gratitude for the opportunity to live, work, and learn on these traditional territories, and I acknowledge the ongoing presence, strength, and contributions of Indigenous peoples and the injustices they have faced and continue to face due to colonialism. Let us each reflect on our role in reconciliation and how we can contribute to a future built on respect, equity, and meaningful relationships with Indigenous communities. And I invite anybody who would like to do that to recognize the territory on which they are dialing in from in the chat. It would be a great acknowledgement as well. So we are celebrating 3 years as a network, and remember that this is a 5-year program with a 1-year no-cost extension. We call it by various names, and I'm hearing most often the CAF project, which is the one that covers the 5 objectives. We also have 2 what we call extension projects, and we'll get into how they came about later in the presentations. But one of them focused on the prairie pothole region, and the second one focused on the Great Lakes. We do have a 1-year no-cost extension that we negotiated at the front end, which enabled us to have carry-forward funds, but the hard end of the CAF project is 2028. I just want to welcome everybody whose faces are on this page and to put a spotlight on some of them. In particular, Pascal, it's just been a true privilege and pleasure to work with you all these years, and in particular on this network. I couldn't imagine doing the work that we do with anybody else. I also would like to acknowledge Jay and Steve, who are somewhat behind the scenes, but they do provide cash support for the network. And Jay, as in his former role as the Executive Director of the Global Institute of Water Security, and Steve Webb as his ongoing appointment as the Director of the Global Institute of Food Security. I'd also like to acknowledge our International Advisory Board members, which include Kevin Bishop, Sheil Bansal, and I see Bansal here today. So Sheil, welcome and thank you for coming. As well as Tim Moore, who we still have to negotiate his retirement. I don't know if he can retire from this network fully, so that's an ongoing project, but he is still engaged at this point. And then the individuals on the bottom row represent those individuals who joined after the launch of the CAF project and are part of the 2 extension projects. Sometimes I have to think about, especially when you work through the early hours of the night on preparing for an AGM, does the work we do matter? Why are we doing this? And I just want to take a moment to kind of ground everybody as why the work that we do matters. And in this image here that I got from reading the New York Times, it was generated by 4/27, and the New York Times, it basically shows the top climate risks across the globe by 2040. And if you look at Canada, we know firsthand all too well the risks of not only the risk, but the actual events of flooding, heat stress, water stress, and wildfires. And these are all projected to get worse with ongoing climate change. I was able to get the November 2024 update to the Climate Action Tracker, And so you could see from this plot from 1900 to 2100 what the global temperature increase has been. And in particular, the green line is what was considered to be a compatible global warming for the way that we live, and that was at a 1.5 degree increase. If you look at the top of it, the warming projected by 2100, you could see that our current policies and actions are looking at somewhere between 2.7 plus or minus 50%. And these numbers reflect our life before the chaos that ensued January 2025. So that is before we've had a very significant change in the geopolitics of the planet, where some countries are now walking away from climate agreements. And so if we also look at 2024 in a rank list of where different countries are in terms of their climate change performance, you could see Canada is ranked in the red zone alongside other countries like the United States and Saudi Arabia. And so whereas we all have a lot of work to do, some countries like Canada have more work to do than others. Now, our network is about natural climate solutions, and just to define it here, these are actions to protect, conserve, and restore nature in order to store carbon and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And in Canada, nature plays perhaps a disproportionately important role in climate change mitigation. The work by Drever et al. That was recently published in 2021, and I believe some of you are co-authors on that paper, estimate that up to 20% of Canada's total commitment can be achieved through natural climate solutions. And that number is equal to 78 megatons CO2 equivalent by 2030. And when we look at where those natural climate solutions will be found, in this also from Drever's paper, we look at protection, management, and restoration, and we look at forests, wetlands, grasslands, and shelter beds. And what we see is that wetlands have the potential to contribute the most in protection, but also in restoration compared to these other ecosystems. So this is just to affirm that what we do does matter. There is an urgency to it, and the role of wetlands as natural climate solutions is particularly important. So what are our goals for this meeting? I see them as three goals. The first is to foster a stronger sense of community within the network by sharing our progress, as well as challenges we faced. And I think I know that some of us have faced some challenges in doing the work. We want this stronger sense of community by sharing our progress so that we are better able to achieve our collective goals, create space for open dialogue, support, and shared learning. Several members of the network have come to Pascal and I with great ideas, if only they had funding, and we've been able to reallocate funds to follow that. Others have come up with challenges, and we've been able to talk through those challenges to come up with alternative work that would be really positive for the network. And so this is a forum that we can all share in an open, transparent, supportive way to learn from each other and to support each other. The second one is to enhance collaboration both within and across objectives. Many of you have come to either Pascal or I to talk about a request for deeper collaboration. And so we want to respond to that request by identifying opportunities to connect, align, and co-create across team members and project objectives, and in particular, both within and between disciplines. And by disciplines, I'm particularly referring to the divide between the natural sciences and engineering and the social sciences and humanities. And finally, another important objective is to mobilize our knowledge into climate action. We're now at the midpoint of our network, and we really want to start amplifying our efforts to translate the research findings into meaningful actions that inform policy and practice, and thereby support Canada's commitment to achieving its climate goals. And so I'm just going to finish off by reminding everyone of our core themes, and I think some of you may not have these top of mind, but these were part of the proposal. These were core themes that were cross-cutting, and the first one is to coordinate and engage, and that's what we're doing today. But we've also engaged with external opportunities, and in particular, I'm thinking of some of the international workshops that have come our way and that people have been actively engaged in, that basically makes even further the impact of this network. The second is to support decision making in the face of uncertainty by advancing tools, frameworks, and dialogues that help navigate complexity and risk. One example here was our commitment to develop an uncertainty calculator that each one of the teams under each of the objectives could use to basically quantify the uncertainty and be able to report that to the decision makers. The third is to mobilize knowledge by translating research insights into accessible formats and actionable recommendations for diverse audiences. And this is an area that Pascal and I have been working on, in particular for tomorrow, day 2 of the AGM, and coming up with ideas of how we might be able to do that. And then finally, our fourth cross-cutting theme is to amplify education and outreach efforts to increase public awareness, build capacity, and inspire action on climate and sustainability goals. And then we go into, the 4 objectives. And I wanted to put them all on one page here because as we collectively developed this proposal and the 5 objectives, I just want to put a spotlight on how they are intended to build on each other. And so the first objective was to develop authoritative estimates of landscape scale density and wetland coverage for agricultural landscapes. As the old motto goes, if you can't see it, you can't manage it. And what we don't have are standardized wetland inventories, and that's really the contribution of Objective 1. The second one is to develop authoritative estimates for rates of organic carbon accumulation, greenhouse gas fluxes to the atmosphere, and carbon transports into and out of wetlands. And then the third one is to take the work of individual wetlands from 1 and 2 to start looking at entire landscapes and watersheds and develop robust estimates of hydrological process controls on organic carbon accumulation and greenhouse gas fluxes at the scale of wetlandscapes and watersheds. And then the fourth was to develop robust estimates of the synergies and conflicts by focusing on wetlands for their carbon benefits versus their other benefits. And then finally, to use the authoritative and robust estimates of organic carbon accumulation and greenhouse gas fluxes to inform policy and practice, and as well to develop these tools that could incentivize changes in behavior to be able to sequester more carbon on the land and to achieve our climate objectives. So you could see from Objective 1 to 5 that they do build on each other. The intention is that there's a lot of cross-fertilization and collaboration amongst the objectives, and that we ultimately are a network that wants to have impact, that we actually can change the narrative and change Canada's position from number 54 and move it higher up the ranks into being an example for the world of how we can use natural climate solutions to achieve our climate goals.